Hello, VIPKID teacher Stephanie here. I have been requesting that VIPKID make a comparison chart between our contract criteria and our raise criteria for some time, but it hasn't happened yet. So I recently thought, why don't I just compare them myself and put it out there to help everyone? Because in a lot of like the Facebook groups and the Fresh Desk forums, there seems to be a lot of confusion. And initially, I had some as well between the contract cancellation rate and class requirements and so on and so forth, and the raise cancellation rate and requirements and such, because they are two different beasts. They are not related. They overlap some, but there's a lot of contrasts, and one does not go hand in hand with the other. So far, there hasn't been a comparison chart made, and I didn't make one. I could have made one. I didn't make one, but I'm going to talk about each one and show you each one today so we can discuss the differences, just so everyone can be on the same page and be a little clearer. And obviously, I'm not doing this on VIPKID's behalf. I'm just doing this to help others. So if there is any thing that is incorrect or anything that maybe you might have heard that is different in a ticket, that happens, obviously. So don't quote me to VIPKID. Go by whatever you hear officially in an official capacity from them. But this is what I've learned and what I've experienced. Okay, so I'm on my third contract, almost my fourth, and I did receive the raise upon signing my third contract. There was what appeared to be a discrepancy that I looked into and had a lot of tickets going back and forth with Fresh Desk that I later found out was not exactly a discrepancy, not something really clear, but according to them and the differences and the criteria, it was not a discrepancy, and the data was accurate. Which, like I said, I received my raise anyway, but I really like data, so I really like things to be correct. So I had inquired and found out based on several ticket responses back and forth why I had lost just a couple points on there, not enough to exclude me from a raise, but just a couple, which is my concern was my next raise. I'm going to need all of the points. I'm going to need all of them in order to receive a raise. So I wanted to know next time when I sign my fifth contract, how can I have all of them? So anyway, let's go ahead and do this instead of chatting about it. First, I'll pull up the cancellations. So if you're watching this on your phone, you're probably going to want to watch it on your computer full screen, or you're not really going to be able to read this because this is very tiny. So when you look at the canceled classes on your contract stipulations, it says 3 canceled classes within 1 calendar day count as 1 cancellation on your participation record. This is 1 calendar day Beijing time. So if you teach some classes the night before and then cancel the next day, or actually I should say you teach some morning classes and then teach some that night as well, and you need to take the whole day off. Those are 2 separate days, Beijing time. Once noon comes, that's a new day. It's 12 a.m. in Beijing, so that will not count. But if you do the night before and the morning of, that would be 1 day Beijing time. So 3 canceled classes will count as 1 cancellation on your participation record. We have 6 cancellations that we can use per contract, so you can do the math in your head. You could miss, 3 classes for each one of those within 1 calendar day. So it gives you a decent amount of cancellations. Those are not soft or medium. Those are just regular cancellations. Soft and medium do not count against your contract at all. They require paperwork and proof of sickness, death in the family, things like that, and they do not count towards your contract at all. In the raise criteria chart, which I will pull up really quickly now, hello, you can see it says cancellation rate is no more than 0.60%. So really, if you were doing this in a percent, this would be it's less than 1%. It's like 0.006 is what it's really like. If you're looking at a decimal, it's very strange the way they did that. But if you're looking at a decimal, it's 0.006. So it's a very small amount of your classes taught. You cannot have very many cancellations at all. Every cancellation you have counts towards this. Your 3 in 1 day as 1 is not going to be counted as 1. It's going to be counted as 3. There has been some back and forth with soft and medium, how they count. I'm not sure because I did not have any soft or medium cancellations. I have heard that possibly the medium are held against you. I've heard possibly the soft are not. The only soft cancellations I had were during Hurricane Irma, and they were put on my contract as teacher ITs, is how they were put into the system. And I can say, based on those soft cancellations that were put in as teacher ITs, they were not counted in my total for my cancellation rate. So they did not count towards that 0.006. They did not count towards that percentage. So if your soft cancellations are put in as teacher ITs, I can tell you from experience that they will not be counted against your cancellation rate for your contract. But any normal cancellations you have will be counted individually. So if you have 8 in one day, which would only be 2 cancellations on your contract because you can receive no more than 2 in one day, I believe it is. Is that what it says? Maybe it's 3. Those would be counted individually, no matter how many they are. Those would be counted individually. You would have all 8 counting towards your max percentage. All right, so the next thing, let's go back and look at. Let's look at the TNS. If you look at your cancellations, your teacher no-shows are counted within those cancellations as well. Teacher no-shows, you can have 3 and is supposed to count as 1 for the day. Teacher no-shows are when you don't call in at all. You oversleep, someone gets really sick, and you're out of the house and there's no way to contact them, which, doesn't happen too often. It's usually oversleeping. People usually, the first couple months, you don't have 3 or 4 alarms set. You learn your lesson real quick. You get that first TNS, and it never happens again. That's what I had. I overslept my second month, and I was terrified that that was the end for me. It was not at all. VIPKID was very understanding. They're like, hey, here are some steps you can take to avoid this because this happens pretty commonly. So I set multiple alarms now on my husband's phone, on my phone, and I make sure that I wake up. I did not oversleep through my alarm. My husband turned my alarm off, and that's why I didn't wake up. So now he doesn't touch the alarms, and we set multiple ones. So if one does get turned off by mistake, then several others will go off. So I received 3 TNS that day. It was 3 classes, an hour and a half I overslept. It was when I was pulling overnights. It was still early in my contract. I was trying to meet a lot of new kids, and the schedule was a little bit wonky. It wasn't always consistent, and I made that terrible mistake. So it has not happened since in almost 18 months. So those multiple alarms really help. But I did receive 3 teacher no-shows. So if I was going by my contract, that is only 1 cancellation that counts against me. So, not so bad. I don't look like a terrible teacher, and no big deal. But if we pull up our race criteria here, again, you can see teacher no-shows and cancellation rates are completely separate on the race criteria chart. You may not have more than 2 teacher no-shows if you want those points in the last 12 months, so 2 contracts. So sadly, I had 3 and I lost 2 points there that I did not receive. But like I said, it was okay because I wasn't making so high of an amount base pay that I could not receive the raise with only all of the other sections filled. So I did receive my raise, but for my next contract, I will need to receive those as well. So, fingers crossed. So far, so good. No teacher no-shows. I try to avoid those at all costs, obviously. I've learned my lesson, but those will be accounted against you individually. It will not be one cancellation for the day or 1 teacher no-show for the day, regardless of how many there are. It will be 1 for every single no-show you have. So if you have 4 no-shows in one day, it will be 4 no-shows and you are eliminated from receiving those 2 points. Okay, so that's it for cancellation and teacher no-shows. That's where a lot of confusion takes place. The rest of it is really just knowing the stipulations. In your contract, there is no minimum amount of finished classes. There is no minimum amount of finished peak time slots, and there is no minimum amount of 5 Apple ratings. That you are required to have. You can work 1 class a week, you can work 10 classes a week, you can work 30 classes a week, you can work some peak time, you can work no peak time. It will not affect your contract. If you are, teaching and, keeping, as crazy a schedule as you want to, it will not affect you whatsoever. There are no minimum, no maximum hour requirements with VIPKID at all, which is super nice because I don't know from experience, but I've heard from many people that a lot of the other online ESL companies you use a set schedule, you're required a minimum amount of hours, and there's a lot of consistency that's required. With VIPKID, that is not. So, I can take off full weeks at a time and take off with my family on vacation or dance competitions, what I just did, different things like that, and I don't have to let anyone know. It's up to me. There's nothing held against me for that whatsoever. If we look at our raise criteria here again, it is very much different. They do not want to give a raise to every single teacher teaching for them, which makes sense. At your day-to-day job, you probably do not receive a raise regardless of what you do as well. So to me, it doesn't offend me that this criteria is here. I was a public school teacher. I did not receive a yearly raise at all. There was not a yearly raise in my county. The much longer teachers that had been teaching for many, many years, that were tenured and all of that good stuff, did receive yearly raises, but anyone that started teaching within the last 7 or 8 years did not receive a yearly raise at all. And the only way to get a raise, and it wasn't a raise, it was a bonus that came conveniently around Christmas time, was to be effective or highly effective. And it was a $500 raise if you're highly effective, or bonus, I should say. And it was around, I think, $200 if you were effective. My county worked on a bell curve, so only 2% of teachers could be highly effective at any time, regardless of how high your testing scores and your observation scores were. In the county, only 2% were going to get that $500 bonus. I know it's a big chunk of change. So it was quite unfair. I was effective my first year. I was told when I asked how I could have been highly effective, since it was actually based on my observation score, not my test scores. My test scores were the highest in my grade level. I was told that I should have coached my score up. I should have told my principal, no, 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 you didn't observe that right. I did this, I did this, I did this. You didn't see it. Maybe I did it afterwards since you were in there 15 minutes, and I should have coached my score up. Where I'm from, you don't do things like that. You don't tell your boss that they're wrong. So obviously, I did not do that my first year as a brand new teacher. But I was quite sad to have extremely high test data scoring, which I had worked extremely hard for, 60, 70-hour weeks, and to still be lumped in with the other large group of teachers that were effective that year. Not that there's anything wrong with being effective, but I had worked extremely hard. So my second year, I also had extremely high test scores. I chatted with my principal and vice principal about my observations, what had not been seen, what had went on behind the scenes once they had left their 20-minute or 15-minute observation, and I coached my score up. So I was highly effective my second year. Woohoo! I got an $500 bonus versus the $200 or $300. So it was not anything equivalent to what a dollar extra an hour raise gives you working for VIPKID. So I do not have a problem with these requirements. You have to teach more than 1,200 classes. If you do this very part-time and you do not teach at least 100 classes a month, then you cannot receive a raise. It is 4 points. If you lose those 4 points, there is no way to earn a high enough score to get the raise. So it is a requirement. You must teach more than 1,200. Recently, in some of the contracts, only 11 months were counted, so it's a little more than 100 each month that were required. I believe, and don't quote me, I believe from now on, that was the first time it was put in place, that it should be 12 months, but I'm not counting on it. I'm getting my 1,200 in 11 months, so I do not have to worry about that whatsoever, which I do this full time, so I get 1,200 extremely quickly. I get 1,200 in less than 6 months. Anyhow, that is a requirement. You must teach at least 1,200 classes to receive a raise at all. You do not need to teach 1,200 classes to work for VIPKID. You will just stay at the base pay rate that you started at, or perhaps receive a raise later on if you begin teaching other more classes in the future when you're eligible for a raise again. Not a requirement, but a requirement if you do not receive full points in all other areas is your finished peak time slots. You must have more than 600 taught. These ones are a little different than the finished classes because some of the finished types do not count. If it is a student no-show, it does not count. I believe if it is a teacher IT or a student IT, it does not count. You must have more than 600 as scheduled finished peak time slots. So those are those hot hours, the ones you see that are usually in a brighter orange color on your bookings tab. That will vary based on your time zone where you live. But those are your peak time slots. And that's, like I said, not required. But if you lose points in any other areas, you will need those points. You will need those to make up for it. And then the last one, the 5 Apple classes, more than 25% of 5 Apple scores from your parents. This one is the one that gets a lot of flack because we can't really control parents leaving feedback or not. I have students I've taught over 100 times, and I might be lucky to get 2 ratings from them. I'm not joking. I have sent fresh tickets. I've tried to, convey how important scores are in feedback to these particular parents because I have more than one, and there is no control over that. Luckily, I have a lot of parents who do leave me feedback consistently, and I try to tell them how appreciative I am and thank them and feedback for their feedback from their previous class, and I appreciate it. I appreciate their consistency and their time to encourage them to keep doing so. But if they decide to stop, and I've had parents who did that, consistently left me feedback for months and months, and then, it got old. They don't need to keep telling me I'm a great teacher, so they stopped as well. And there's nothing we can do about it. For your contract, that's not an issue at all. Having, 10% 5 Apple ratings will not affect you. Having several 1, 2, 3 point ratings or Apple ratings can affect your contract. You can't have consistent negative parent feedback. But having a small percentage of 5 Apple ratings is not going to affect your contract at all. But it will affect your raise. You must receive more than 25% for your as scheduled classes. So they're not going to count those canceled classes or those teacher ITs or those student ITs. They're not going to count any of those against you in your percentage, but they will require that out of your as scheduled classes, more than 25% receive 5 Apples. So I know some teachers struggle because they're right there at that 23, 24% mark, and that can be, a difficult thing to manage because it is hard for us to do anything on our end. The only thing you can do is, is mention it in feedback to your parents and hope that they read your feedback and that makes a difference and maybe they'll help you out a little bit. But there is nothing that we can officially do, which is a little bit difficult. So anyway, I think those are all the differences between the two charts that or between the text and the chart that I can cover today. I don't really think there are any other differences, but hopefully that clarifies things. I know this is kind of lengthy, like all of my videos, but I do know there is constant confusion about this. People think that they are eligible for the raise and they're not. They find out that they did not qualify for it, and they're often going by the criteria for their contract, which is very different and is not the same. So the raise criteria is a bit more difficult to achieve, which, like I said, I find, somewhat sensible, just due to them not wanting to give a raise to every single employee based on time alone. Now, again, that's based on my experience as an actual public school teacher. It seems a better deal than what I was stuck with actually. So, it was only 2% of teachers were getting a bonus in my district at any given time, regardless of how great they were. Like I said, everyone could have a perfect score, and well, I guess not everyone, but if you were 99% and 2% were already at 100%, you weren't going to get a raise at all. So I don't find this extremely unfair based on requirements in the education field usually, but we all know the education field isn't really that kind to its teachers. So if I came from a different job where I did receive yearly raises, I received bonuses simply for doing my job and not going above and beyond, way above and beyond, then I may find this to be unfair. But today I'm just comparing the two and helping you be more aware of what you do need to do, what is required. So when you come up for your new contract, you're not surprised if you did not receive the raise. And while you're working towards that raise, you know exactly what you need to do. So I hope that this was helpful. Like I said, if there is anything incorrect, I'm not speaking on VIPKID's behalf. I just did this because I see questions asked so often. And like I said, I experienced a bit of confusion myself as well. And I really just wanted to try to make something that clarified it a bit until VIPKID does so in an official capacity, which hopefully they will in the future, and then you won't need this. But anyway, I hope this video was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. I have a lot of other videos on different things you can watch too if you'd like to. I normally don't ask people to subscribe, but I mean, I guess it's good to have a lot of subscribers. I always see it in everyone else's videos. So if you want to subscribe to my channel, go for it. And thanks so much. I hope this is helpful. Goodbye.